Yes, guys, what's happening? And welcome back to the channel and welcome to tonight's live stream for the preview and predicted lineup of Chelsea versus Al Hilal of Saudi Arabia in the Club World Cup semi-final tomorrow. Before we get into that and before I introduce tonight's guest, please make sure you smash a like on this video. And if you're tuning in live and you're not subscribed, you're watching back and you're not subscribed, please do click that subscribe button. Appreciate all the support and it helps the channel grow. Looking to hit 400 by the end of this month, so please do help out. And I'm delighted to be joined once again by journalist Jamie Wilkinson. Jamie, welcome back to the channel. Great to have you on. Pleasure to talk all things Chelsea with you as always, mate. And this is another opportunity for Chelsea to add the elusive missing trophy to the cabinet, not just for some players, but for the club as well to have won everything. Obviously disappointing to miss out in 2012 under Rafa Benitez when we lost to Corinthians 1-0 in the final. How important is it to the club and to yourself as a fan that we get the job done this time?
Yeah, I think it has increased significance for a few reasons. First of all, that Chelsea's all about winning trophies, and the fact that we have won it all, as the fans like to say, that's our party piece, you know, when we're talking about the likes of Tottenham and Arsenal and stuff like that. So it is the missing one, and it's the one that we should have really had in 2012, and we let it slip out from under our grasp. And the thing is, when entry to the competition is just through the Champions League, you don't know when your next opportunity is going to come to try and win it. So I think now we're here. I think that every Chelsea fan can agree that there's no excuses. We need to win it. And personally, I've absolutely milked saying that Chelsea are European champions, and you'll be absolutely right if you think I will if we're world champions. So we have to bring that trophy home.
No, yeah, we need that gold badge in the center of the shirt just to just to round it all off. And as you said, it does take on added significance because, as you said, it's not like a domestic cup where you can just enter every year and you get another chance. The Champions League is pretty hard to win. Only one team's ever won it back to back. So, I mean, in our last appearance, 2012, basically 10 years ago, pretty much. Yeah. Since we last had an opportunity. So, yeah, the opportunities are few or far between. And I mean, it's not. I don't know if this is a good omen or not. Probably not. But I mean, the last Champions League winners not to win the Club World Cup were ourselves back in 2012. So it is heavily favoured towards the European champions. I mean, if we're being honest, the calibre of teams in the competition is not great. We've obviously got Palmeiras, the Brazilian Champions League winners, who beat Al Ahly 2-0. So that we'll be facing potentially them in the final if we can get through tomorrow. I mean, what do you make of the quality of sides in the competition itself? I mean, obviously we don't watch a lot of kind of football in the Far East and in South America, but I mean, there's been talk of a potential revamp of how the competition is done. I mean, do you think that's needed?
Yeah, the competition in its current format is, as you said previously, is heavily weighted towards the European champions. And that almost takes away it seems funny coming from a Chelsea fan, considering we were the ones that lost, but it takes away from the competitiveness of it all. And, as much as Al Hilal fans on Twitter would like to convince us that they're the greatest team in the history of the world, in truth, I hope this doesn't come back to bite me. They're not. These areas of the world, at least on a club level, are not renowned for the quality of football. So, the World Cup on an international scene, in the international scene, is the absolute creme de la creme of accolades a player can win in his career. Whereas the Club World Cup it's a bonus for many, unless you do come from these Brazilian nations. I know they really like from Brazil and Asia, and they really place a lot of precedence on winning a trophy. But I think for us, it's just it's another one to add to the list, and that isn't really what it should be, considering it is supposedly the biggest honour in club football.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just wanted to bring something up on the screen now, which the Al Hilal boss Leonardo Jardim said. Obviously, former Monaco manager as well. I'd be interested to get your thoughts on it. I do agree with him a little bit. He's basically saying he likes to give a warning to FIFA because he finds it unfair. Some teams have to play 4 matches in 8 days, and other teams, the best, have to play 2 matches with their teams rested. And there should be better care of the match schedule to recover, so Asia and South America can have more of an ambition to win this cup. I mean, it kind of goes back to what we were saying, how it's weighted in favour of the European champions. I mean, what do you make of the fact that you've got some of the Asian teams in there that have got to play, 2, 3, 4 matches to potentially win it, and then you get us and the South American champions turning up, and you only have to play 2 matches to win it. I mean, it doesn't really seem fair as a tournament format in itself. Surely everyone should be playing the same amount of games.
Well, you'd think so, but it shouldn't be a surprise that FIFA are protecting their own interest in the sense that these teams are not the money makers for FIFA. They're not the ones that are going to be bringing eyes to the competition, at least from this side of the world. So, as you said, it does link back to the whole competitive nature of it. We want everyone to have an equal and fair chance. They already don't, because the European clubs have such an enormous budget compared to the other competitors. So really what we should be doing is trying to level the playing field as much as we possibly can. But I think I'd agree with him. In its current format, it clearly does favour the teams which don't need favouring. And it would be nice if there were more Corinthians type teams who did, upset the odds and beat the European champions. I think that in itself would make the competition more interesting as a whole.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, back to a Chelsea perspective then. I mean, obviously at the press conference today with Zoltlo, obviously Thomas Tuchel still isolating through COVID. Hopefully could be joining up with the squad towards the end of this week. Just on that point, how big a miss do you think it is going to be for Chelsea? Well, definitely tomorrow. And if we make the final, potentially the final, how big a miss do you think not having Thomas Tuchel on the sideline is going to be?
Well, you'd have to ask the players, because I think there's certain individuals in the dressing room that would absolutely detest the way that Tuchel microanalyzes every kick of the ball and screams at them for 90 minutes. And, they'd probably just rather get on with it. Maybe they've acclimatized to it by now. Maybe there'll be those who will feel more relaxed not having him on the sidelines. But I just think the intensity of how Chelsea play when we're at our absolute best, I think you do have to put some of the credit to that, to the fact that Tuchel he's always there in his technical areas, always barking out orders. He's always lifting the players and demanding more. And not to say that his assistants can't do a good job at deputising. I just think at the end of the day, Tuchel is arguably the greatest manager on the planet right now, and I don't think there's any replacing that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Azpilicueta saying today that obviously we're disappointed Thomas isn't here. We have to be ready for it. He'll be very important pre-game, and during it, he'll have a direct connection with the staff. We can't think further than this. It is what it is. I guess it's just one of those things that there's no point over analysing it from a player perspective. He'll obviously be picking a team. He'll be doing the tactics and whatnot. And ultimately, I guess when you're on the pitch and you're playing, I don't think it makes that much difference who's standing on the sideline or not, because all the work's done before the game. So I guess from that regard, it's not that big a deal. But obviously, of course, you'd want your manager on the sideline.
Yeah,
I mean, if you possibly could.
I think what hasn't helped with the fan anxiety in relation to that is the performance against Plymouth, which I'm sure we'll get onto. But just the mere fact that was our first game after Tuchel tested positive, and it just seemed a little bit flat. And going back to my previous point, if he was in the technical area demanding more, trying to lift the players, would he have been, not to say the assistants were satisfied, but would he have allowed that to continue and that game to play out in the manner in which it did? I just feel as though he will have direct communication with the staff. He'll probably have direct communication with the players even at half time, but I don't think there is any exact replacement for his influence in the dressing room and on the touchline.
No, 100%. I don't think you can ever truly replicate that. But I mean, obviously you mentioned it there, Plymouth. First game back in a couple of weeks, you could tell that we looked a little bit off the pace. Obviously, essentially a first choice lineup, really, apart from Kepa in goal rather than Mendy. But I mean, I was at the game. The performance was awful. It was really bad. And I guess hopefully we just kind of got that one bad performance out the system. But for Al Hilal, it's gonna need a big improvement in terms of levels of performance from across the board. Really, there weren't that many players that could hold their heads high and can be proud of what they did on the weekends. So I mean, do you think we've got it in us to raise the levels the amount required.
Well, I would argue that I don't think Tuchel would have thought that a team of that strength was necessary to beat Plymouth and progress to the next round of the FA Cup. I have a suspicion that he may have, foreseen that the players would be a little bit off it and have some rust that they needed to shake off before the Club World Cup. And I think that's why we went with such a, I mean, to be honest, he alluded to it in his press conference before the game that, it was just about getting the team into the rhythm, having had such a long period of time off. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't, maybe it wouldn't have been such a surprise to Tuchel that the players weren't completely at it, but the hope is that they are come tomorrow evening.
I mean, just on Al Hilal, obviously we don't know an awful lot about them. They have got some experienced players, a bit of quality in the final third. They've also got Odion Ighalo, who was on loan at Manchester United, the former Watford striker who has scored a few goals in the Premier League in his time. They've got Moussa Marega, who used to play for Porto, Champions League experience as a centre forward as well. And they've got Chelsea's nemesis, Mateus Pereira, the former West Brom player who always scores against us. I think I was chatting with an Al Hilal fan on Twitter, and I think in the semi-final where they beat Al Jazeera, not the semi-final, the previous round, they beat Al Jazeera 6-1, I think, and Pereira actually got his first goal for Al Hilal then. I mean, yeah, perfect timing. Do you think they've got enough about them? I mean, obviously those three, we don't know an awful lot about the rest of the side, but do you think in those three and the rest of the team, they could pose some potential issues?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's be real. We're not going to sit here and poke holes in Al Hilal's defensive line, or even their midfield, and comment on individuals in that sense. But the players that you've mentioned there, of course, they have enough quality to hurt Chelsea. What we perhaps need to recognise, I know Chelsea fans are, notoriously anxious ahead of these kind of games, but we play against teams that hurt us on a weekly basis, and while they have, let's say, no disrespect to the other players, while they may have 3 danger men, the average team that Chelsea faces will have 3+. So I don't think we should be any more frightened, anxious about this particular opponent just because we're playing them in the semi-final of a competition. Again, all due respect, I don't want to trivialise their achievements or their quality or anything like that, but I'd be interested to see how it would measure up in terms of where in the Premier League table would this team be, because 3 attacking players wouldn't be enough to get you in the top half of the Premier League, and if we were playing a bottom half team in a semi-final of a cup competition, we'd fancy our chances of going through. So yes, I don't know. Of course, we need to be aware. Of course, Pereira will probably score against us, so we're going to need more than the one. But yeah, fingers crossed, our quality shines through and we can get the job done.
I mean, I was on a little look earlier. They're fourth in the Saudi Arabian league. They're about 14 points, 13 or 14 points off the top of that league. With I think they've got a game in hand. So, look. This is obviously different competitions to what they're playing in weekly. There'll be a lot more up for it. So yeah, to be taken seriously. But as you say, we should have more than enough quality to see that potential threat off. Obviously, in terms of team news for Chelsea, no Reece James. I know he's troubled out there, but he was left out of the squad. Mason Mount, there's going to be a late fitness test on him tomorrow morning before the game. And Edouard Mendy, after winning the African Cup of Nations with Senegal on Sunday night, he was going to be joining up with the team today, and they were going to take a look on him, do an analysis on whether he can play tomorrow night or not. But other than that, there's a full complement of players to choose from. Just on a couple of those issues, Jamie, the right decision not to involve Reece James in the competition squad overall.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was ever a possibility really for him to realistically be competing in this competition. But I was a little bit saddened by the idea of him not coming along at all. Yeah. And especially at the stage of his recovery they wouldn't want to take any risks, and traveling around the world and is probably not ideal. But at the same time, I think it's important that, this team wins together. They, as a collective, make a habit of winning trophies and having that medal around their neck. And Reece James is arguably going to be the man to lead this team in the future. He'd be my pick to be captain. That's a whole different matter entirely. But it's a separate point. I don't think there was ever really prospect of him playing, but I'm very glad that he's there in and around the group, and hopefully he too will be another with a medal around his neck.
Yeah, and considering he played such an important role in us actually even getting into this competition in the first place, I think ultimately, like, even if they're not going to play, those players should still be out there with the travelling squad, and they can just use it as a bit of warm weather training. Yeah. Obviously, before we get in
February holiday.
Yeah, exactly.
Over here at the moment. So
yeah, well, 100%. I mean, before we get into picking our team, it seems to always be talked about. We're just going to mention him again. Romelu Lukaku, a piece in the Independent today by Matt Law, basically stating that Roman Abramovich is backing Thomas Tuchel over kind of the issue and how he's handled the situation with Lukaku, which ultimately, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, but you kind of read into it that if Lukaku's performances or attitude, etc., don't improve, then Roman won't be afraid to sell him. He won't have taken kindly to the interview and, you know, what he said about the club when he spent all that money on him. What are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts on kind of Lukaku's performances in general since that interview dropped?
Yeah, it's almost becoming tiresome talking about him, but at the same time, you just can't avoid the subject because, you know, Tuchel hasn't taken him out of the limelight. He's put in there, you know, front and centre, leading the line, and Lukaku hasn't been doing a very good job of it. You know, I think we made this point when the interview first came out that Lukaku hasn't, even at that point, he hadn't justified how good he clearly thinks that he is. He didn't have credit in the bank here at Chelsea, and he still doesn't. And, you know, he's arguably going in the wrong direction with his recent performances. So, you know, I don't know how much Roman Abramovich is tuning in, but I'm sure the reports that he would be getting from Chelsea board members wouldn't be pretty glowing of Lukaku of late, attitude-wise, conduct-wise, performance-wise. So you would like to see it as a strong message from Abramovich that he's backing the manager ahead of everyone, and that's a major positive. But at the same time, I think that maybe Lukaku is just fighting a losing battle at Chelsea, irrespective of who the manager was or what Abramovich's stance would be on it. There just hasn't even been any preliminary signs of recovery for me. I have to say I'm growing quite concerned about it.
Yeah, no, it is a concern. I mean, obviously, it's important to, you know, it's not just him. You know, he does need the service, etc. But there's only so much of that you can keep saying. But I mean, ultimately, he's not delivering the performance because we kind of expected from him. And it's not just he's not delivering the performances. It's more, the bigger concern is the fact that it looks like the attitude and the body language. It doesn't seem right. It seems like it looks like he doesn't want to be here. He's not particularly trying. You know, like at the Plymouth game, you know, his movement was just non-existent. You know. Yeah. Every time he got into the final third, there was no runs, there was no nothing. He wasn't really asking for the ball, and then when the ball didn't come to it, he's throwing his arms up. You know, I get it's frustrating, but you know he's got to do a bit more, and he's not delivered the level of performances. But I mean, what do you think of? When obviously Tuchel keeps picking him, what do you think to fans that are down the trail of thought that the board are influencing, kind of, you know, saying that he's got to pay because they've paid so much money for him? I mean, do you think there's any truth in that at all?
I don't buy that.
No.
I would have been more open to entertaining that idea with Torres.
Yeah.
Because that was a whole different kettle of fish. But I think that Tuchel is trying to play Lukaku into form. He's trying to play him until he gels with the other attacking players, and he's hoping that 1 week it will just click and we'll get the absolute best version of Lukaku and we'll be better off for it. There is a point where we have to, you know, be honest with ourselves and say, does Lukaku justify a spot in our starting 11 any longer? And I'd argue we would be past that point now if the players in reserve weren't equally as inconsistent. Yeah. You know, there's not. Let's say Armando Broja was at Chelsea in the squad, or Tammy Abraham the previous season when he was scoring in cup competitions and, you know, one for the future, and you could tell that he was playing for the badge and he was being kept out of the team by Lukaku under these circumstances. I think it would be entirely different to the fact that we have two very expensive acquisitions behind him in the pecking order who, when they play, don't really justify their selection either. Talking about Havertz and Werner. So I think it's a difficult one for Tuchel because he's not blessed with options, which sounds bizarre to say because you would scarcely find an attack in the world that would have 3 striker options like Lukaku, Havertz and Werner on paper. But, you know, how well you think of them on paper doesn't really translate into how well they perform on grass.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's exactly the nail on the head there. Like, there's no obvious there's no obvious like replacement for Lukaku in terms of, oh, he shouldn't be playing, so-and-so should be playing. You know, as you said, the other guys that would play down the middle, they haven't been doing anything. I mean, Werner, when he come on against Plymouth, was awful. You know, the guy is always offside. I don't know if I've ever seen a player who is offside as much as he is. He wasn't even running for the ball. He just looked like, I don't know what was wrong with him, but he was awful. And then even Havertz as well. I mean, I know people are calling for Havertz to play, and we'll get into it in a sec. But I mean, for Kai Havertz is a weird one for me. I'd be interested to get your thoughts. Like, clearly, very talented footballer, very technically gifted, sought after by a lot of European clubs. Obviously, we stole a march and got him. But I mean, I've got to be honest. Apart from kind of the champion, I don't know what to say. Apart from obviously the goal in the Champions League final, and he played well in the run to the final as well. Other than that, I'm really struggling to find any positives for Kai Havertz in a Chelsea shirt. I mean, I don't know what his best position is, and every time he plays, I'm just like, there's just not a lot there either.
Yeah, it's difficult because there's certain players where their performance level isn't always up to scratch, but you'd argue they're moments players and they deliver at the right occasions with a moment of quality. I think Hakim Ziyech is a good example of that, up his game recently. But anyway, Havertz he hasn't really had too many of them moments. Of course, he had the moment, scored the goal that won us the Champions League, but there hasn't been that many times since he signed for Chelsea that I thought, wow, what a player we've got here. Yeah. And at the time we were linked with him, we were told that he was, you know, a phenomenal young talent who was going to go on to become one of the best players on the planet. And that may still be the case, but he's such an enigma that everywhere he plays, it just looks as though he's being shoehorned into that position and he doesn't play it naturally. At some point, and it's down to him, it's not just down to the manager. He needs to decide what he is. Is he a number 10? Is he going to play on the right and cut in on his left? Is he a number 9? He's good with his back to goal, good touch, needs to work on his finishing if he wants to do that. But, you know, he can't just be a talented attacking player. He needs to be an effective attacking player, and he needs to do it on a consistent basis. You could argue he needs the opportunities to do so, but has he had enough opportunities to prove what he can do and hasn't delivered? I think you could argue that as well.
Yeah, I think it's the same that they're well into their second season. Now you get to the end of this season, it's 2 seasons. You don't want to start writing players off, but with a big investment, you'd expect some sort of return after 2 seasons of football. I mean, I think Chelsea ultimately will keep Havertz for at least another season. I think Werner's a different story. I'd fully expect him to be sold this summer. Yeah. But yeah, Havertz has got to kind of fix up pretty soon because, you know, Chelsea are a club that spend big money and will just bring someone else in. Yeah. Right, let's get into the lineup then, mate. So, great news that we're back in the yellow kit tomorrow. I really dislike that home kit, so it's good. It'll be good to see us in that. Goalkeeper. I mean, the biggest compliment that I can pay Kepa is that we've not missed Mendy at all in this run of fixtures that he's not been here. Obviously, I touched on earlier in the show that they're going to take a decision on Mendy. He's meant to be joining up with the squad today. But Jamie, as far as you're concerned, you know, he's obviously been celebrating the African Cup of Nations. It's been a difficult tournament. You know, Senegal did win, big party and stuff. There's no point playing him in this game, is there?
No, I don't think so. You know, not just because of the late nights and the celebrations, and I think it would be impossible for him to fully concentrate on the task at hand and the travel that he's had to do as well. It just doesn't make sense when we have a deputy as good as Kepa.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's worth sticking with Kepa, and he hasn't really put a foot wrong at all. stopped us from going to a penalty shootout in the FA Cup. So yeah, I think he fully deserves to keep his place. I mean, I've got this as a back four again, a 4-3-3. I mean, Jamie, are you fully expecting us to see that again?
Yeah, that seems to be the direction we're going in, doesn't it? So yeah, it would be bizarre for Tuchel to tear that up and start again for a semi-final.
Going with right back, I think in a flat back four, I think it's pretty obvious. Obviously, Azpilicueta scored a really nice goal actually on the weekend. A bit of a back heel flick. Not something I thought he'd have in his locker.
No.
What are your? It's really the only obvious choice that we've got a right back. So it's kind of just he's in by default as well.
Until Reece James is back, he picks himself, and you could argue he is the captain. So in these games, maybe he should be in there regardless. But there's no alternative, really, is there?
No, just on his future. Obviously, he was at the press conference today as well with Zoltlo, the assistant manager. He was asked about his future. He was fairly non-committal on it. Said he wasn't going to be speaking about it. Fabrizio Romano reporting that there is an offer on the table from Barcelona to sign him as a free agent. I mean, are you sort of more resigned to the fact that Azpi is probably going to be moving on at the end of the season?
Yeah, I think he would have seen it before with Lampard, with Cole, in that, they feel as though that they've done enough for the club to get a 2 or 3 year contract. Club will just say, you know what, that's not our policy anymore. They'll bend the rules for certain players, but we do have Reece James coming through. We all love Azpilicueta. He's a legend, but from a purely footballing standpoint, isn't the worst idea for the club to just keep him on a low rolling contract and phase him out when necessary. But I don't see him accepting that, because I still think he feels as though he has a lot to offer. So I am becoming increasingly resigned to the fact that he will probably leave this summer.
Yeah, I think it's really important that he gets a proper send-off as well. If he does leave, gets his testimonial, etc. as well.
Exactly. It needs to be sorted ASAP. It can't roll into the summer and he doesn't get to say goodbye to the bridge. No.
In terms of the centre-back pairing then, obviously we had no Thiago Silva at the weekend due to those kind of coming back late from those qualifiers in South America. Rudiger played 120 minutes. We saw Christensen subbed off at half-time. I mean, are you expecting... I know the 120 minutes of Rudiger is probably fit enough to play again today, but would you expect him to partner Thiago Silva, or do you think it could be a different pairing?
No, I would expect that. Thiago Silva's, he's spoken prior to the tournament when he first joined up with Brazil on international duty about how significant the Club World Cup is for him, and how he has told the squad about how they absolutely need to win it and they need to take it seriously. So he's in there by default. And as for Rudiger, the man doesn't tire. No. He's a machine. He'll still be doing 60-yard sprints up the flank in the 120th minute if he had the opportunity to do so. So absolutely he's in there as well.
And then in terms of left back, we saw Malang Sarr start there against Plymouth, and then at half time he went into the centre of the defence. I thought he struggled a little bit at left back or against Plymouth. He's still new to that position, still obviously going to be learning it. It's not natural for his game, but yeah, he has done well when he has played there. Obviously, an important game. Alonso played there in the second half against Plymouth. He got the goal, and there was more of a threat from that left-hand side. Do you think Malang Sarr keeps his place, or do you think he'll go with Alonso?
I'd argue this is one of the trickier ones.
Yeah.
But especially, I don't want to hold it against him because he's been so solid, but that mistake to give away the penalty from Malang Sarr did remind us that he's still a little bit rash and raw. You could argue Alonso is not any more defensively capable, but I do wonder if, considering the stakes, you would put Alonso in there.
Yeah, I think it'll be Alonso as well. I've just got a feeling. Obviously, Sarr with 120 minutes, the mistake. Alonso coming on, doing well. I think he'll probably go with him, but I wouldn't be surprised if Sarr played either. I don't think it's.
I don't think it's not any disaster when you can't pick between two certain players, because we're not going to be any considerably worse off, regardless of who starts. I won't be disappointed if Sarr starts or Alonso starts. Tuchel's decision.
Yeah, and in terms of that single number 6 position, that Honda, we saw Jorginho play there against Plymouth. I've got to be honest, I thought he struggled at times quite a lot.
Yeah.
He got overrun in midfield on a number of occasions. Are you expecting to see him deployed there again, or do you think he might play N'Golo Kante there? What are your thoughts?
It's a difficult one because Kante, Kante is as fit as Kante probably ever is at current, which is, he's fit enough to play, but he'll probably have a niggle. So you wonder whether you throw him in for the semi-final or you rest him in anticipation of playing him in the final. But I like you. Well, I'm a big Jorginho fan and definite Jorginho apologist, but he didn't have the best of game against Plymouth. So if I was picking the team purely based on who I'd want to see in there, then it would be Kante. Yeah,
I mean, one thing that I think works in Jorginho's favour to him playing is I think he will play, because if I'm Chelsea and Mason Mount, you're checking his fitness last minute tomorrow morning, I'm not sure if it's worth risking him from the off in this game. No. So I think that Kante and Kovacic could probably play in those number 8 positions.
Yeah.
I mean, would you take a risk on Mason Mount? Do you think the club will take a risk on him?
It depends, doesn't it? Because we don't have the specific injury details of his injury. But let's put it like this: if there was the chance that if we put Mount in, it would be a risk, and we'd risk aggravating the injury to the extent that he'd, not only miss the final, potentially some action after we come back from the tournament. It's just not worth it. We have to manage our players' minutes, especially when they've got problems. So I think considering the strength and depth we have in those midfield areas, it would be probably unwise to play a player who, is, if fit, just on the edge of being fit. So I wouldn't be too disappointed if he was rested.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just don't think it's worth the risk. With potentially a big final coming up against Palmeiras, who will be a better quality of opposition. We want him 100% fit for that. If he can play sort of half an hour from the bench, then fine. But as you say, there's no point in risking something from the start to potentially make something worse. So I think in that situation, I guess Kovacic, Jorginho, and Kante is the one to go with. I mean, Saunaghes did play a bit against Perth. I'd be surprised if we saw him from the start, but you never know. And I'm not sure what Loftus-Cheek's injury status is at the moment either. But I still expect him to be on the bench. Moving into the front three, a lot of Chelsea fans have asked for continuity from Thomas Tuchel. We were constantly swapping around that front three for the last few games. Now we have had a consistent front three in Hakim Ziyech, Hudson-Odoi, and Lukaku. Let's start with Hakim Ziyech. Seems to be a bit of a player reborn. We touched on him earlier as a bit of a moments player. He's now delivering on a more consistent basis, and he seems to be one of the big benefactors of switching to this 4-3-3 with 2 out-and-out wingers. Him playing on that right wing like he did at Ajax, essentially where he was signed to play when we bought him. I don't think it's any surprise that he's been our best attacking player in the last 3 to 4 weeks. I mean, what have you made of kind of, I guess, the renaissance of Hakim Ziyech in this 4-3-3 system?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely staggering, isn't it? You play a player in their best position and they play their best performance level. He's always been one that's polarized opinion, and you could argue he hasn't even. He's just caused widespread frustration across the fan base. But that frustration, the root of it was that we all know how talented he is and what an absolute wand of a left foot that is. So if he is able to keep this level up on a consistent basis, then he can be a huge player for us. And, even a few weeks ago, I wouldn't have been surprised if, we were looking at losing him in the summer, probably because he wanted to leave more than we wanted to move him on. But he's got to be one of the first names on the team sheet at the moment. Definitely one of our most proactive, energetic, effective, direct attacking players.
And I think he's one of them that when he's in form, you just want to keep playing him. I think he's someone that if he's kind of plays well one week, finds himself out the side again, it can be quite disheartening for him. So when he's playing well, just keep playing him. So I think at the moment he is one of the first names on the team sheet. And just how obviously he announced his retirement from international duty today. He's obviously had a bit of a falling out with the coach. There was probably going to be no way back in for him under that current manager anyway. Who knows if the manager changes, there might be. But he's announced his retirement. How much of a plus is that for Chelsea as well?
Yeah, it's a plus for Chelsea because he will be around Cobham on the international breaks. So, you know, maybe that would be the perfect way for him to keep this kind of consistency and momentum going. It is, and we can't get away from it. It's a damn shame for him to, you know, regardless of who would consider who to be in the wrong in this situation between him and his manager. No player should have to, especially one of his quality, should have to retire from international football at 28 years old because they don't have any other choice, essentially. It's a shame for him, but yeah, you could argue it's positive news for Chelsea.
And in terms of going on to that left-hand side, obviously Callum Hudson-Odoi started the last few games there. Do you think would you keep him in the team? Or do you think there's an opportunity for the likes of Christian Pulisic, maybe Timo Werner, or even Kai Havertz?
Yeah, this is one of the more difficult ones, isn't it? Because as you said, Chelsea fans have asked for that consistency, and we've got it. But has it necessarily delivered as intended? Hudson-Odoi he hasn't been bad. He's had his moments, and he has looked bright, but he's still very unrefined. Just that final ball. Just hasn't quite developed with like to the point that you would like to have hoped by now. Whether that would justify putting him on the bench for this game, I don't know. In my opinion, it will either be him or Christian Pulisic.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because like I say, Hudson-Odoi, he's just rough around the edges still. Like there's a lot of ability there, but then there's a lot of frustrating things there as well, which you're going to get with a young player. But I do think that he probably is Chelsea's number one pick in that left wing position at the moment. But I mean, is he going to start this game? It's hard to tell. Maybe I do think it's between him and Pulisic. I don't think Timo Werner's got a shout just because I thought he just is not really in any sort of form. And I don't think Kai Havertz is a left winger. So I mean, it is a toss. It's a toss up between those two. I mean, I'd like to say Callum, but I wouldn't be surprised if Pulisic played in this game either.
Yeah, I think it will be Hudson-Odoi. I think
I think it will as well.
He's shown it at Borussia Dortmund, and he's shown it at Chelsea again that he clearly feels as though Christian Pulisic is more effective off the bench, having an impact. And I'm sure Pulisic wouldn't be particularly pleased with that, especially considering he's the star performer of the US national team and their absolute hero. But I think that Tuchel clearly trusts Callum Hudson-Odoi, and as we've said, he is rough around the edges. Is he ever going to develop that step further if he is not playing and not being trusted? You could argue probably not. So I think it's probably the right decision to keep him in there, trying to get him some momentum building, and Pulisic and the others are there in reserve if needed.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And then moving on to the centre forward position, I mean, there's going to be a large section of the fan base that won't be happy if Romelu Lukaku starts. A lot of people wanting Kai Havertz to start, as I mentioned earlier. Ultimately, Jamie, I've got to be honest, mate. I think it's going to be Lukaku again.
I think it almost certainly will, regardless of our opinions on that. I think, as we said previously, Tuchel's made it pretty clear that it's his intention to play him into form. It goes back to whether you think it's right or wrong. You sign a striker for £100 million and you're in a cup final, you play him. Especially if it is a striker of Lukaku's ability. So, yeah, I don't want to say unfortunately, because it's not necessarily unfortunate. Yeah. I don't see any other possibility other than Lukaku starting this game.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't think Kai Havertz has done enough to warrant a start. I mean, I thought he was poor when he came on against Plymouth. There was a particular 2-on-1 which he just completely messed up. Which if Lukaku had done that, the stick he would have got for doing that would have been unbelievable. I mean, even just like, and I know Twitter's it's good for some things, not so good for others. This week, last couple of days, people criticizing Lukaku's yoga and stuff. It's just like when we're micro-analyzing everything this guy does. By all means, criticize his performances on the football pitch. Fine. Don't pick at everything he's doing. It's just not needed at all. And at the end of the day, it's not helpful to anyone.
Yeah, I think once you decide you don't like someone, you don't like anything that they do. But Lukaku is a Chelsea player, and it's in our best interest if he feels settled here and he starts performing well here, even if that's just until the end of the season. So I don't think it does anyone any favours, the fans constantly getting on his back. And I'm sure I'll come back and watch this when he misses a chance tomorrow night, angrily tweeting about him. But
yeah.
There comes a time where we do just kind of have to band together. I think the dressing room have clearly let bygones be bygones with Lukaku, and Chelsea fans, that we are. I mean, you could argue the perfect way for him to bury the hatchet would be to win this competition for us. So, I really hope Lukaku starts and he scores a hat-trick tomorrow. And I've with how he's been doing in recent weeks. So
I think positives for him. He just needs to get on the score sheet is a massive plus. If he doesn't do that, then just, put a bit more effort in, improved body language, look like you want to be there, make the runs, that sort of thing. But ultimately it is down to him. And at the end of the day, it's not too late for Lukaku to turn this round. If he wants to turn it round, he can. We've seen the likes of Jorginho. He was booed by a section of the fan base. Everyone wanted him out. Ends up coming third in the Ballon d'Or, and he's one of the fan favourites now. It's happened with a number of Chelsea players that if Lukaku wants to, he can turn this round. But as you said, it's in everyone's best interest to get behind him and want him to do well, because if he does well, the team are going to do well. And ultimately, that's what, as fans, we all want. But that's obviously myself and Jamie's team for tomorrow, guys. As always, let us know your thoughts in the comments or the chat. Jamie, before we round out, mate, the score prediction from yourself for tomorrow night. Obviously, Al Hilal scored 6 last time round. I think 6 again is very unlikely. What are you expecting tomorrow?
Well, I was poking the bear a little bit with Al Hilal fans in my mentions, and I told them we were going to smash them 5-0. So I'm going to double down on that, and I'm going 5-0 for Chelsea. Lukaku to score a brace, and us to absolutely run riot and enjoy the sunshine in the Middle East and get our hands on that trophy this weekend.
Yeah, I mean that would be ideal. I mean, I can't see a 5-0, but I think we can win 3-0. I mean, I've got to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if we conceded. I'll probably go a 3-1 to Chelsea. But I mean, if we turn up and put in a performance that we're capable of doing, we really shouldn't have any issues whatsoever. So a couple of Chelsea wins, hopefully a place in the final against Palmeiras awaits us on Saturday night, and we could become world champions. But this is a really important game tomorrow. But guys, thank you so much for joining in. Thanks for tuning in live. If you're going to watch it back, hope you enjoy it. Please do smash a like on the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Looking to hit 400 subs by the end of this month. So please help me get there. All the support is appreciated. Guys, make sure you follow Jamie on Twitter. Some great stuff on there. Mate, thanks so much for your time as always. I really appreciate it. Guys, we'll catch you in the next couple of days with a match reaction to the Al Hilal game. But until then, up the Chelsea and catch you soon.